I'd just really like to say thanks to DFAT and particularly Pablo Kang, who's the ambassador to the UAE, the Australian ambassador to the UAE. They've been phenomenal, especially in the last sort of 48 hours. Also, obviously, to all the government's help, government representations that have happened over the time. We'd like to particularly sort of thank, obviously, our friends and supporters, but family, but most specifically, I'd like to thank this guy here, who's always believed in and told us we were going to get to this point. And look, we really couldn't have got here without his help, and that's John Steddon from Shan Taylor Lawyers. So he's just been an absolute rock for us, and we just couldn't have done it without him, and I don't know how ever we'll repay him. I said I'd be his coffee person for the next 20 years.
Meeting you too, lady.
Yeah. But look, like also, I've just got to make a couple of other quick mentions, and then that's Gabrielle. I don't know if Gabrielle's here at the moment, but the Park Regis in Dubai, once we were tossed unceremoniously out onto the departure terminal a couple of days ago, they came to the rescue, and there's a few Aussies that are in the management there. So just on the case, just briefly, I wasn't just once acquitted in Dubai on appeal. I was acquitted 3 times from the outset. It was very clear very early on. I was clearly just doing my job, and that was found in all judgments. Unfortunately, I've been caught up in the middle of a grubby dispute between a lot of self-interest property developers, and look, going through on the other side now, we just want to try and get on with our lives and start to not feel so threatened and see our family again and learn what they look like and
meet the new one over there.
Yeah, some new members of our family too, and we just want to try to get on with our lives and learn to sort of know what it's to be an Australian again on Australian soil.
Julie, how tough has this whole ordeal been for you?
It's just unbelievable how tough it's been. It's from the very start of it, it was just unbelievable, the fear that we felt, because it was totally unknown, it was totally out of the blue. And what I can actually say is that through this, Marcus has been so courageous, so strong. And even yesterday, the day before, when they kept us in a room for 2 hours and then they started to mention state security again, I just felt so ill. I felt so sick, because that's where he was in solitary confinement. And I looked at Marcus and he was calm. And he went, no.
I think I was just numb to it. It wasn't any heroics there.
No, Marcus, it wasn't. You were so calm. You handled it so well. And I think that's through all of this, you've just maintained your dignity, and you've just shown to be just a wonderful man. Love you.
Thank you.
An important question, what's the latest on Dudley?
Dudley's, I'm going through the quarantine process at the moment, so he'll be with us shortly.
Yeah. So he's available for covers shortly.
Marcus, there's a lot of expats in the UAE, a lot of Aussies.
Yeah.
Is there a message out of this?
Look, it's not a bad place. I don't want to portray that one bit, but you have to be aware of your surroundings. Look, at a lot of things, it isn't an issue until it's an issue, but there are issues, and that does happen, and it might be a 1 in 100, but there's always a 1. And look, John always said to me, when this first happened, you try to bring a Western legal mentality through to it, but John always said, look, work in the confines of the legal system you're in. Don't try to put across your views and your ideas of what should be happening, and that's what John's helped me to do for this entire time.
Given what came out of the first trial, were you surprised that Mr. Joyce would have done it?
Well, look, I don't really know the details and the technical aspects of the judgment, but there are some applications of the law as well which come into it, and look, no, I think in the fullness of time people will dissect that and they'll look at it a little bit more, but look, I don't really want to say too much about it.
What about the evidence in the first trial though?
It's sketchy. It's like, especially unfortunately from some Australian witnesses, it was a bit sketchy. There's two things where I suppose we're looking at the moment. The first thing we're looking at under the labour provisions in the UAE. I've always just remained as a suspended employee, pending the outcome, and now it's just an application of those labour laws. And look, I don't know. It's one of those, how long is a piece of string? I don't know. Look, that's one thing. It's a bit of a random environment as far as the legal aspect's concerned.
Are you able to seek compensation?
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, so we'll be looking at that, and then and then there's a few issues here. No doubt John will look at in the future as well.
So what sort of compensation would you be looking at?
Oh, look, I don't know the numbers or anything like that, but there's two limbs to it. There's a labour claim and then there's a damages claim, obviously. Look, I was speaking to Julie on the plane and I said, look, you can give me 10 million, 20 million, 30 million tomorrow, but how do you rebuild 5 years of your life? How do you get back your 40th birthday in solitary when guards were laughing at me? Like, for example, how do you get that back? So I think, look, no matter what money you put around it, it will never be fully got back.
How long were those days?
Oh, well, one day, sometimes a day had passed and I thought a week had passed, sometimes a day had passed and an hour had passed. So you just have no concept of time. There's no light. I didn't actually know where I was.
How do you cope with that? How do you get through that?
Yeah, maybe punching Julie in my dreams and...
No, he still has nightmares, like just about every night. And just recently there was one and it was really, really violent and he was just doing the same sort of thing, just that trauma that he was going through, and it was... His reaction was...
But look, we worked through that, and one of our good friends over here, Rosemary's a psychologist, and she always said to me, look, when I first got out of incarceration, write your thoughts down and write your thoughts down and write your thoughts down, and maybe those thoughts will even come into a book at one point, and maybe it might be a self-help book for somebody else.
Did you think that, where are you going to now? I mean, you've come back, you've got your clothes in your suitcase and not much else.
That's about it. Well, I'm told I've got a hotel room, this guy helping us out once again, and what happens in 2 days after that, I don't know. We've got to start rebuilding our lives. Julie said it. I've got to look at maybe taking a bit of a break and that. But I think one of the best things I could do is probably start to go back to work and start to exist in a bit of a normalised society again, and have a beer after work on a Friday and talk about some rubbish over football or something.
What have you looked forward to coming back to Australia?
I think it won't really sink in until I'm looking at Sydney Harbour maybe this afternoon or something and having a beer down there. I think that's when you really realise you're home.
You're here in time for Australia Day. What are you doing on Australia Day?
I hope to be in Sydney for Australia Day. You can't get a better place to be in.
And what was your worst fear when you were in jail? Was it that this day wouldn't come?
Yeah, look, you always think the worst. You try to think that it's eventually going to happen. You've just got to wait. If you told me on day 2 it was going to be 5 years, I would have probably killed over right then. But I don't know, you get there, you just have to. And people say, how do you get through it? And it's just, you have to.
What was the support like from the federal government over that period?
Look, it's contactable-wise, they're very contactable, particularly the local guys on the ground at DFAT, the UAE guys, incredible. Even up to today, 2 of them escorted us through customs after the debacle the other day. So they're very hands-on. They're really they're the guys actually on the ground. What happens at a bureaucratic level? Well, maybe there's some questions around that, but I've actually always said that we've got to redefine this word assistance, consular assistance, and maybe we've got to call it support, because consular assistance denotes maybe financial support or something like that, financial assistance, but that in reality isn't available.
John, perhaps some good here from you. If you want to take a step forward. Legally, how tough of a slog was this for you?
Oh, it's been a very long slog, there's no doubt about that, and there's been times when, look, I never told Marcus, but I thought our chance of getting him home was 0 at best. I remember once my wife sort of saw something on TV about the case and punched me in the arm and said, John, you're never going to get these people home. But we've just taken a one step at a time approach, and I always said to Marcus that the case was never going to be won with a smoking gun piece of evidence. It was always going to be little steps, one step at a time. And I've had the client from Central Casting. He's never once questioned my advice, and I've never really had any trouble getting instructions. From the day I took the case on, I had no doubt that Marcus Lee was an innocent man.
This case pro bono, why was this case so important to you?
Look, something about the case spoke to me from the minute I took it on, and I wasn't going to let something as silly as money stop me from taking this case on. There are far more important reasons to provide a service than money. The case is and has always been one about helping a fellow Australian, and I knew that I had the skills to assist, and I couldn't turn my back on them simply because they couldn't afford to pay me. It was just far too important.
What are the risks involved? What actually happened in Dubai all those years ago?
I beg your pardon?
How would you summarise what actually happened back in Dubai all those years ago?
We can just take a step over here for the cameras. Thank you.
What happened in Dubai all those years ago is just... It's a farcical situation, really, where a man has been arrested simply because he shared the same passport as other people who are under investigation, and he was working in the same country. The investigators were telling Marcus very early in the piece that they had no reason to believe he was guilty, but I think he was just prosecuted because it was easier to do that, and so his rights were infringed because he was the forgotten man, and Marcus has always been the forgotten man in this case, which is what offended me more than anything.
I asked the same question before, but is there a lesson to other expats over there?
Look, I think as soon as you leave the confines of Australia, you leave the protection of our legal system, and we need to appreciate that. I'm not saying Dubai is better or worse than Australia, but I think anyone who goes to a foreign country has to understand that they have to respect the local laws and work within that system. Marcus respected the laws at all times. He worked within the system, but the system let him down for so long. Eventually he was exonerated, but it took far too long. Dubai is a wonderful city, but the reality is it's also a place where you can be arrested and imprisoned without charge, put in solitary confinement for 2 months. You can spend 7 months awaiting a charge, 9 months until you get bail. You can then go through a trial that meanders on for 5 years before you're finally acquitted. The judges who exonerate you are entirely different judges to the ones who heard the evidence against you. And it's a strange system, but that's their system. And we shouldn't be judging their system through the prism of our experience, but we should always appreciate that when you go abroad, things are different.
John, given what came out in the first trial against Mr Joyce, were you surprised that he was acquitted?
Oh, look, I think everyone was surprised, not necessarily because of the allegations or evidence or anything like that, just because of the system we were working in. And I'm sure Matt was. I'm very happy for Matt Joyce and his family. You know, obviously, as Marcus has said, there's questions, but he's an innocent man. He's been acquitted in the eyes of the law. Any questions we have will come out in the fullness of time.
Do you expect you'll become a go-to lawyer for cases like this, or are you done?
I keep getting contacted by people wanting me to assist Australians overseas, but they tend to be people who've just read about the case in the paper and are not in any way connected to the unfortunate Australian. No, I don't think so. I've certainly developed some interesting skills, but I'll probably fade back into the relative obscurity of my Brisbane legal practice.
What happened at the airport the other day with Marcus when he wasn't allowed to board the flight? Do you think that will cause any ongoing problems between Australia and...
I don't think there'll be ongoing problems. I think if it had happened again yesterday, that we would have had a major diplomatic issue. I think it was just an administrative error, an unfortunate one at best, but once again, it's just one of those things that happens in Dubai and many countries around the world.
Do you need a holiday too now?
I wouldn't mind one. For 5 years I've been saying to Marcus and Julie that, you know, don't worry, we'll all be sitting on my deck in Brisbane having beers one day, and I'm going to fly back to Brisbane tonight and start putting some beers in the esky and planning the menu for our barbecue.